Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Jim and this is the part 3 of the video that we take a look at installing solar and lithium and inverters and all that good stuff in our 2021 Winnebago Voyage V3134RL. Great camper, we're so in love with it, but we're going to talk about what we've done to the electronics side of our camper in this video. If you haven't seen part 1, part 2, and part 2A, there'll be a link in the description below, and I invite you to go look at those before, or in this one we'll also just sort of do a wrap-up of the whole project. In part 1 we redid the battery box and put a floor in it and installed 2 lithium batteries and some cabling and disconnect switches and all that. Part 2 we installed the inverter and a Progressive Industries surge protector. Part 2A, we installed all the remotes and the additional wiring to go with those. And today in part 3, we're going to look at the solar part of the installation and then look at the whole thing all put together. And I am very pleased with how it came out. And I hope that maybe you are too, and maybe you learned something. So hold on a second, let's get over to the unit and see what we can see. So I should begin by telling you that one of the things that really attracted us to the Voyage was the way they laid out the front end of this fifth wheel. It's a front bedroom, and there's a bedroom slide, but what they did is something different from what most manufacturers do. Here in this compartment on this side was the battery storage, and on an equal size compartment on the other side was the 2 30-pound propane tanks. So with the 2 propane tanks on one side, you had this whole compartment to use to install solar or batteries or an inverter or any of those things that you wanted to do without taking away any of the pass-through storage, which this is the smaller door size, the other size it's bigger, it's a significant pass-through storage, or the front compartment, which Winnebago also does different from everybody else. There's a large storage in the bottom, but that's segregated from an upper storage panel, which is this one here. So if you do decide to put a generator or something like that in the bottom, you still have this whole upper shelf area that goes all the way from side to side, which you can't see terribly well because of all our stuff that's in there. All right, so back in here, let's look at an overview of the whole thing. What I did on the inside of the door was to make a wiring diagram, a simple wiring diagram of how everything is connected, and then next to it a series of instructions on how to operate the whole system, because I know how to do it, but it won't always be me, right? So let's just sort of walk through it. We've got a connection on the side of the camper. It's a 50 amp connection. It's a dual AC unit. So the AC connects here. It goes through Progressive EMS surge protector, which is inside the underneath behind the water compartment. And then the power, the AC power, goes from there into our Go Power IC3000 inverter. And it comes out of that and goes to the AC distribution panel. Also connected to the inverter is a remote, which is inside. I will show you in a bit. And then on the DC side, we have 2 BigBattery.com 170 amp hour lithium iron phosphate batteries. Those are connected to a battery disconnect switch. It's also a battery selector switch. What I did was I added a switch so that we could choose battery 1 or battery 2 or both. So if we needed to take one of the batteries out of the system, or for some reason we wanted to run on one or the other, we could do that without doing any physical disconnection at all. So positive comes out of the battery selector switch and splits. Part of it goes to a second disconnect for the inverter through a 400 amp DC fuse, and then up to the Go Power IC3000. The IC3000 is a combination unit. It is both an inverter, 3000 watt inverter, and a 125 amp charger and a transfer switch, which is why the AC runs through it on the way. The other split of the positive comes over to the positive bus bar, and then that feeds everything else in the camper. Power comes out of the inverter as AC, obviously, and goes inside. So on the negative side of the batteries, we go through a shunt so that we can monitor power going in and out of the batteries, and then to a DC bus bar which then feeds the rest of the camper. The DC shunt is attached to a battery monitor, which is mounted inside, which I will show you in a bit. And so that takes care of this side of the... On this side, we've got the solar. I bought a kit from Renogy, the 400 watt premium kit, which is what I installed here. There's 400 watt mono panels on the roof. They're connected in series because they have bypass diodes in them, so that's less of a problem if you have shading, and they recommend that to get the highest voltage possible into the MPPT controller. There's also a 10 amp inline fuse up on the roof that came with the kit. I bought a 2-pole breaker as a solar disconnect that's rated for, I think, 16 amps. So you can completely disconnect the solar on the roof from the rest of the system. And then the Rover 40 amp output MPPT controller, which then goes through a 40 amp fuse on the outlet and then feeds to the DC bus. The Renogy kit also comes with the BT1 Bluetooth transmitter, and so I can, with my smartphone, log in and look at what's going on with the solar. There's also a panel on it that gives you that same data, although it looks much prettier and you can see it all at the same time in the phone. So here's what the compartment looks like. It's a little full, but we figured out that it's going to be fine. So let's start and work our way up. 170 amp hour lithium ion phosphate batteries from bigbattery.com. So far, very, very pleased with them. They each will carry more than the amp hours that they are rated for. There's the battery disconnect switch, where we can choose a battery 1 or 2 or both. And then there's the inverter disconnect switch. You can see I tried to label everything to make it as simple as possible. And it comes out of there, goes to a 400 amp fuse, and then over and into the inverter. On the DC side, the power comes out, goes through the shunt, and then out of the shunt, the large cable goes over and into the inverter, and a smaller cable goes to the DC bus bar, the DC negative bus bar, which is there. This is the positive DC bus bar. It's actually a bus bar across the top, and then these are all fuses that go to different circuits in the camper. Then on this wall, we've got, this is the Winnebago was pre-wired for solar, which was nice. There was MC4 connectors on the roof. I didn't have to break any seals or gasketing or anything up there. I just simply plugged in, brought the 2 wires down. They were 10 gauge, which was nice, into a 2-pole disconnect. I see sometimes people take the negative side of the solar from the roof and just ground it to the frame with all the others. I'm not sure that that's such a good idea. I like the idea of it being isolated, so we put both sides through a solar disconnect breaker here, and then that feeds into the MPPT controller from Renogy, and then the power comes out of that, and on the positive side there's a 40 amp solar fuse, and then that feeds into that positive bus bar. And if you look right now, the batteries are fully charged. You can see they're sitting at 14.3. I actually have the charger in the Go Power unit disconnected. I have it turned off, and so all the battery charging is coming from the solar, and we're only getting 4.8 amps right now because the batteries are full. Now, when I built this battery box, originally it was a box suspended in here, a plastic box with 127 series lead acid battery, and the rest of the compartment was open, which is great so that you get circulation because of the danger of hydrogen gas with lead acid batteries. But what I did was I put a floor in and sealed this compartment, because one of the things with lithium ion batteries you have to worry about is when it gets below freezing, you can not always charge them, and many of them have low temperature disconnects that keep you from trying to do that. However, if you want to be able to use the batteries fully when you camp in cold weather, you got to try to keep some heat in the compartment where they are. So I sealed the whole compartment up. But then by the time I got done, I've got the batteries and I've got that inverter, and that inverter, if you're inverting you're boondocking, can throw off a lot of heat. In this compartment, I was worried about this compartment getting too hot instead of too cold. And so what we did was I added a vent there in the bottom for air to get in. And then on this side of the compartment, let's see if we can get in here to see, I added a marine blower, which can be used as a bilge blower or an engine compartment blower, and it's rated for continuous use. And man, it pushes a lot of air, much more than you would get from like one of those muffin fans or something like that. And then that's connected to the place where the vent on the lead acid battery vented outside. You know, if you have those in a battery box, there's usually a hose on them, and that vents to the exterior, and that's right there. Come back around. And then I bought this thermostat on Amazon, and basically it monitors the temperature in the compartment, and it's programmable that you can set it for whenever you want the fan to come on and go off at whatever temperatures you like. And so that's what we have. And so I have the fan set to come on at 105 degrees Fahrenheit and turn back off at 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And it pulls a lot of air through this compartment, and it keeps that Go Power inverter very happy, and it does not get too hot in here. And then the last thing I did was just sort of install the RV style light with a motion sensor, so that if I need to come out here and see what's going on in this compartment after dark, it'll light itself up when I open the door. So that's the whole shebang here. And let me show you, here is where the AC comes in, and then the progressive surge protector comes with a remote. And I was going to mount that inside where the other remotes are, but then I said, you know what, let's put it right here above the wet bay. And above the wet bay, and then I also printed out a list of the fault codes and laminated that, and then attached that to the wall there, because this is where I am when I plug in. And rather than run back and forth to the inside to see if this is happy, I mounted it right here. So I plug in, turn on the breaker at the pedestal, and then I walk back over. And this, it doesn't look like all blinky in real life, folks. It's just because of the way the digital camera sees it, I guess. And then it gives you about 15 seconds of checking before it actually turns the power on, and then it turns the power on. And then it feeds it over to here where the inverter charger is, and the inverter also does sort of the same thing. It monitors the voltage for a few seconds before it turns the power on. So we do have a bit of a delay after we plug in, but not enough to worry about. The other thing I meant to mention was in here, this vent fan control comes with a remote thermometer, and I have that thermometer mounted right here. It's this hanging free, and that's right near the outlet of the heat vents on the inverter, which is where most of the heat's coming from. So I'm hoping that's catching the temperature of the air coming out of the inverter, and so we're moving air through the compartment based on how hot the air is coming out of the inverter. All right, so that's everything here. We'll pop up on the roof and take a look at the solar installed on the roof, and then I'll take you inside and show you the remote, so hold on. Okay, up here on the roof, things are pretty straightforward. 400 watt mono panels from Renogy. We bought the kit from Renogy rather than piecing it together, and you might save a little money piecing it together yourself, but I like the idea of everything coming from one place, everything made to go together. Renogy's customer service was great anytime I had a question. And it comes with all of the Z brackets and the screws and nuts and bolts and all the stuff that you need, including the fuse. So 4 panels wired in series. Then the output from the 4 panels comes over to the solar prep, which was made by Go Power. And installed on the unit by Winnebago, and then that's the fuse inside that. So nothing too exciting to see up here, except to say that we eventually are going to add more solar. And there's still lots of roof left to do that. I'm probably going to add another 400 to 600 watts of solar. I think the general rule of thumb is you want to have twice as many watts of solar as you do amp hours of batteries. And right now I've got 340 amp hours of battery, so I want probably at least 700 watts of solar, so we'll probably get another 400 or so up here. So that's what it looks like on the roof. And I would just say the way that we put these down is I put the 3M VHB tape underneath the Z brackets, and then used the mounting screws that came with the kit, and then sealed it on top of that with die-core. So they're very solid. All the screws that went in got into good solid wood, and with the VHB tape underneath and then the die-core on top sealing it, I'm very confident that this is going to be just fine. All right, hold on and I'll take you inside and we'll look there. Okay, now we're inside, and right across from the entry door is this wall where Winnebago made room for all of the panels. This unit comes with the LCI 1 panel that basically controls all your lights and your heaters and all that sort of stuff. I mounted the Go Power IC remote right here. You can see it says that the charger is on standby, and that's, if you look there, you see the charger on-off light is off. And that's because when it's here, I let the solar do all the work, and rather than make the charger do it, and it keeps the batteries at, well, 100%. Right now you can see that this is the remote for the battery shunt monitor. This one I bought off of Amazon, and it's exactly like the Renogy one, except it doesn't say Renogy on it, and it's half the price. So check that out. This is made by TF03K, whoever they are. But it's the same factory, probably the same line, minus a sticker that the Renogy stuff comes from. So instead of $100, it's $49, and it seems to be working perfectly. It keeps track of power in and out of the batteries. Right now, again, the solar's not doing much because the batteries are fully charged. And then the remote, there is no remote for the MPPT controller, because remember that came with a Bluetooth module, and so I can read that directly on my phone. So we have two remotes in here. The progressive EMS remote is above the wet bay, and then the MPPT controller is on Bluetooth on my phone. Okay, so that's it. I invite your questions or comments down below in the description. Feel free to like, subscribe, do all those sorts of things. I don't put out a ton of videos, but I try to put out stuff with good content when I have something that's worth sharing. So I invite you to do that. Like, comment, subscribe, do all those things if you like. And if you comment and you see something that you don't like the way I did it, just be gentle, please. And I will be gentle in my response. It's way too much harsh stuff on the internet, especially in comments. So let's not do that. All right, folks. Very good to see you. Thanks for watching the video. Again, if you missed parts 1, 2, and 2A, the links for those will be in the description below. More projects coming, so until next time, happy camping.